It really, as I was playing that, I was just sort of feeling that sense of coming out of the wilderness or something, a song. Maybe it was the sound of Rachel weeping for her children. It's awesome. So,
Shalom.
Shalom. We're doing a special focus for these 4 little webcasts on no little subject of Pesach, Passover, and I just want to say, really, we're focusing more on. I think we as Christians, we maybe have some understanding of Passover, and we have our own sort of interpretation of how it fits in our belief and with Yeshua. But what we want to do in these 4 webcasts is to focus on the experience of Gil and his family and his people during this time, and what that looks like. What does Pesach look like for the Pentzak family? No, I mean, seriously, I realize there's a huge amount of preparation for Pesach, more than any other thing, right?
There are so many things that we need to say, that we should say about Pesach, that I have so many things that I have in my head. Don't forget to say that, don't forget to say that, because it really is the most important. It's the most important holiday. It's more important than, for example, if we had, I don't know, like an importance scale of holidays, then Pesach would definitely be the first one, even higher than Yom Kippur, for example, Day of Atonement. I mean, Pesach is everything we do, everything we have in our covenant with God, is always in memory of going out of Egypt, in memory of the salvation you gave us in Egypt. That's all we say all the time.
Everything goes back to that.
Everything goes back.
So
we put on our tzitzit, like the tassels,
yes,
and it says so in memory of what happened in Egypt.
So that's every day.
It's an everyday thing. We say it tens of times a day. In memory of Egypt, in memory of Egypt. And there is a famous Talmudic saying that in every generation, a man should see himself as he went out of Egypt himself.
Mm-hmm. So is that why you think that you pray that, like, every day you remind yourselves is to build that inside of yourselves, that sense of coming out of Egypt? I think that the main reason for that is that is the foundation. That is the foundation of our covenant with God. That our commitment to Him, because He rescued us from Egypt. But it's not about He rescued us, from the misery that we've had there thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. It's not just about it. It's the question is, why did He rescue us? Why did He take us out? And the answer is that He took us out to make us His own, and to give us the Torah, and to bring through that, to bring news to the world. Right.
And that is really the foundation stone of our covenant with God.
But if you're saying, why did He take you out, then don't you have to ask the question, why did He take you in?
Okay, very good.
That's
a very good question, and the truth is that I've just heard a beautiful description of what happened in Egypt. We can actually look at Egypt as if it were the womb in which the Jewish people was conceived, and we know that in every womb we also need something to begin, the new life in the womb, and we actually see Joseph. The whole story of Joseph being sold by his brothers, betrayed, and then being Joseph basically going into prison and slavery, and he had some rough time, before he became the king of Egypt. But after he became the king of Egypt, it says that Joseph basically made Egypt fruitful. Okay, Yosef Hifra basically made it fruitful, like the word pri is fruit. Hifra et Mitzrayim, and we use that verb Hifra in a context like in a context of wealth, but also in a context of bringing new life into a woman's body. That is, it's the same action. Wow. Actually, so we look at Joseph and we see Joseph as if he were the seed, and Egypt was the womb, and out of that we had a new embryo, and that's the people, because we had to go through all those 210 years of suffering, and that was a Holocaust per se. I mean, what we've had there, labor, not labor, but like hard work. I don't know how you say it in English, but but very, very hard. I mean, the word we have in the Bible is a word we keep only for that type of work. A work that breaks your body. It's that type, that basically backbreaking work. And babies were thrown into the Niles. The daughter at the beginning, all babies, and then just the boys, and there was a whole thing there. I mean, they were persecuted in a very bad way, and apparently we had to go through those years of suffering because it gave us the ability to come out of there, tabula rasa. Blank page, clean, no identity, right? A slave usually has no identity, no former opinions, or let's say political involvement of different people in the nation. No, nothing. We were all equal. Everyone was brought back into point zero, right? And that's how we went out.
Wow.
That's how we went out, and such those we received Torah.
Wow.
Not like any other, not in any other way. God took a people of slaves, that had no desires for themselves other than make it to the next day. And we know that kind of a feeling of an atmosphere within our nation. Not from too long ago, 70 years ago. There was a lot of correlation between these two events in our history. Only that one took 6 years and one took 210 years. And despite of all the difficulties in Egypt, we know for a fact that the Jewish people has managed to grow immensely. Right? They came down. I mean, the family of Jacob came down to Egypt, 66 people. And 210 years later, or a little bit more than that, they went out 600,000. Okay, so they managed to multiply, and under a very harsh circumstances, but they did. And there was a lot to tell about how did they manage to do that, and who was responsible for that. And in our Now Weeks, when we have on Friday night, when we have Leah, my wife, and Michal, our friend, sitting talking with the group, they usually like to talk about that, the role of the woman in Jewish history, how women basically, they were the ones that we need to be thankful for bringing the nation to what it is. But I want to go back to that Talmudic saying that says that in every generation a man should see himself as if he is coming out of Egypt. Now I want to take this saying and connect it with a verse. I think it's from Isaiah, that it says that on that day, the lost ones would come from the land of Ashur, which is Assyria, and those and the hard workers or something like that from Egypt. Do you know the one? Do you know?
I think it's Isaiah 59. I think.
I'm not quite sure, but in Hebrew, I mean, I know that I can quote it in Hebrew. I don't know the translation exactly, but I can check and put it next. But so now the question is, who are those lost ones from Assyria? I wonder what the translation is. That's quite interesting. So there is a question: who are those lost ones from Assyria and Ashur, as we call it in Hebrew, and those hard workers from Egypt, from Mitzrayim? And the answer is that the land of Ashur is Assyria. But the land of Ashur, these are the letters in Hebrew for the word Osher. Osher is happiness.
Yes.
So those lost ones from the land of happiness, everything goes very well in their lives, everything goes smoothly. They would come and behold, the salvation of God. And we also have the hard workers from Egypt, and the word for Egypt in Hebrew is Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the same letters like the word Meitzarim. Meitzarim are the straits. Straits.
Right, yes.
And those guys, the hard workers from Mitzrayim, they are the ones who live their lives in the straits, in the narrow gap, and it's hard for them. It's hard for them to see, wide, all the way to the horizon. And both of these people, basically, we're talking about the Jewish people being in exile in those countries, and then coming back for salvation. But we say, this is a metaphor for those who live the good life, and when you have the good life, then you tend to forget about God, you tend to forget that you really need Him, you feel like you can do it yourself, my way or no way, that kind of thing. So those guys would come, and also those hard workers from the straits, those who live their lives in the narrow gap, and they would come as well and experience the same salvation, because both need God.
Right.
So, there are ones who recognize it a bit more than others, but both need God equally. And this really comes to our life as well. We have those kinds of people, and we have those kinds of people. We also have in our own personal lives, each of us, we have the times in our life where everything goes very smoothly and well, and and that's also kind of a test, from God. It's not like He's giving you all these good things and that's it. It's kind of a test, will you remember me in good times as well? Not only when you need my help.
All right.
Are you going to ring my bell only when you need something, or are you going to give me something when you have it in your hand? It's also a question. And Pesach really brings everybody together. The verses in Exodus, when they talk about the sacrifice, the first sacrifice they made on Pesach, right? They had to bring a lamb. And the verses say that a man cannot eat the sacrifice alone. It has to be in a group of people. It has to be in a group. Now, if you don't, it has to be, first of all, in your family. And if you don't have enough people in the family to finish a whole lamb during that night, because you have to finish everything according to the verses, and whatever you have left, you need to burn it. You can't leave it. Okay, you can't leave it. So if you don't have enough people in your house to eat with in order to finish it, then you need to join forces with your neighbors.
Call in the neighbors.
Exactly, like your neighbors, your friends, your other family members. But you have to do it in a group. You cannot do it alone. And this sense of bonding, around the sacrifice that we're bringing together as a nation to God. This really goes back to what we said, like in each generation a man should see himself, as if he came out of Egypt, I came out.
But again it highlights that whole sense that I always keep coming back to this, but that sense of being a people, and it's not about the individual.
And
not just
on Pesach, you feel it. It's one of those moments during the year in which you feel it the most.
Yeah.
I think it's Pesach, and I think it's also Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, when all nation comes, to Temple Mount.
That's amazing.
And we see and worship together. I've heard a rabbi say, and I really liked it. He said, Yom Kippur is a Day of Atonement. That's the holiest day of the year. But we say Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur.
Mm-hmm.
But on Pesach, we say Leil HaSeder. Leil HaSeder, the night of the Seder.
Yeah.
Okay? The night of the Seder is basically order. We'll talk about how we celebrate Pesach.
Yeah.
But it's the night of the Seder. So we have the holiest day, but the holiest night is on Pesach.
Oh, I see.
So you have the holiest night and the holiest day.
Yeah, and the Seder very much is very much centered around the meal, and
it's centered around, well, a few things. Well, the meal is only part of what we do, but it's not.
But when you say the Seder, it includes the meal, doesn't it?
Yes. It's basically like a 3-hour.
It's
a 3-hour session, like this webcast, basically. So stay tuned.
It's really amazing. I'm just this whole concept of constantly putting yourself back. Well, not even putting yourself back, but actually coming inside the experience of coming out of Egypt, as though it's now, or it is now.
It is now.
Exactly. It's not as though, right?
It is now. It is now because we all have our Egypt.
Yes.
We all have our Egypt as individuals, but also as a nation. In every generation, there is an Egypt. There is Egypt in every generation. And we have to see ourselves, coming out of that Egypt.
So,
being taken out.
What might you say would be Israel's Egypt right now?
Do you think we have time for that?
You can start on it at least.
Well, we have a lot of challenges that we are facing.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of challenges, with our neighbors around us, with the world in general, being criticized. I think today is not so much of a physical threat. It is a physical threat, but not as a physical threat as it is a spiritual threat. Today we have a lot of influences from other cultures, affecting. We have a lot of winds, that try to blow the tent from above our heads. It's it's not easy.
How is it like when you're teaching your children about Pesach, and how do you feel that they receive that, that whole sense of really identifying with it? Do you think that sort of happens at a certain point?
I think they really identify with the story, with the story of what happened. I think they have a good, the older they get, the better the picture is, but I think they have quite a good picture of how it was. But of course they can't really absorb all the details like we can absorb all the details as well. Can we understand what is the hand of God? The hand of God.
Brought them.
The hand of God. God is saying, I did it with my hand. Of course, it's not a regular hand with 5 fingers. But it's the hand of God, and it's God's arm.
Yes.
That He says.
God feeds us from His hand.
It's hard to not hard, but it's fascinating to think about. It's really fascinating to think about, and it makes a very, very, I would say, pleasant. It gives you a very pleasant, warm sense to see yourself in that picture, and that's what I'm trying to do with my kids. I'm trying to make them see themselves in the picture. You were there. You are there.
Wow.
And you are being taken out on that night.
Amazing.
That's the way to talk about it.
So we'll come back to that in our next webcast. And stay tuned.